Wonderwall. It was supposed to be a quiet night. Michael had planned to reheat leftovers and maybe finish that documentary. But when Emily kissed him on the cheek and said, "I'm just going to dinner with Claire, don't wait up," something in her voice tugged at him. Not suspicion, just a subtle tension, like a chord played slightly off-key. An hour later, scrolling absently through his phone, Michael noticed something odd. Claire had posted a story, cozy on her couch with her dog and a glass of wine. Alone. Not out. Not with Emily. A beat of silence thundered in Michael's ears. He stared at the photo. No mistake. Without hesitation, he grabbed his jacket and keys. 20 minutes later, he parked across the street from Bezos, the dimly lit Italian place on 9th. And there she was, Emily, seated at a corner table, candlelight dancing on her face, smiling, laughing, leaning across the table. But it wasn't Claire sitting opposite. It was a man, handsome, confident, dites-moi, and holding her hand like he'd done it 1,000 times. Whoa. Back at home, Michael couldn't sit still. He paced the floor, questions ricocheting through his mind. Was this the first time? Had she lied to him before? Emily had always been kind, composed, thoughtful, but maybe too composed. Maybe there were signs, moments he dismissed as paranoia. He remembered the time she said she had to work late, only to return with no laptop and damp hair. Or the way she'd suddenly become protective of her phone, laughing at texts she never showed him. Michael tried calling Claire, straight to voicemail. He scrolled back through messages with Emily, searching for clues, for patterns, for evidence that he wasn't losing his mind. Nothing obvious. Just the nagging certainty that he had seen what he saw. And yet, it didn't fit. It didn't make sense. But it was real. And it was tearing through his gut like fire. Now, sleep became impossible. Michael lay awake, the ceiling fan whirring overhead like a broken metronome, his thoughts a storm of images. Emily's face in the candlelight. That man's hand. Her laugh. He tried to recreate the moment. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe it wasn't what it seemed. But he couldn't forget the way she looked across that table. Not like a friend. Like something deeper. More familiar. He turned to her side of the bed, cold. Empty. Set. Her pillow still perfectly in place. Her perfume faint in the air. He grabbed it and pulled it close, trying to calm the ache in his chest. But it only made it worse. She'd lied. And he'd seen the truth, not by choice, not by invasion, but by accident. And now that he knew, there was no turning back. Well, no way. The next evening, when Emily casually mentioned dinner again, this time with a client, Michael nodded. But inside, everything froze. He smiled, even kissed her goodbye, but his mind was already elsewhere. This time he would follow. Not out of vengeance. Out of necessity. He needed truth. Not suspicion. Not questions. Just answers. He waited 15 minutes after she left. Then he slipped out, keeping his distance, heart hammering. She didn't head downtown. Instead, she turned into a side street and parked near a small French bistro, nowhere near her supposed meeting spot. Michael parked half a block behind. Watched. Waited. His knuckles white around the steering wheel. Then he saw him again, the same man from Bezos, walk up, smile, and embrace her. And she melted into his arms. Rowan. The embrace wasn't brief. It lingered. Hands around waists. Foreheads touched. They spoke in low tones, laughing softly. Michael felt like an intruder in his own life, as if reality had spun off its axis. Emily turned, her profile visible as she smiled up at the man. It wasn't a flirty smile. It was comfort. Intimacy. He had no camera, no proof, but he didn't need one. The truth was right in front of him. She had chosen someone else. Maybe not permanently, maybe not openly, but emotionally. She was gone. Michael sat frozen, the night pressing in on him like a closing fist. The dinner had never been just a dinner. And now, whatever they'd had was starting to unravel, thread by painful thread. While Michael didn't remember driving home. It was like floating, weightless, numb, detached. The city blurred past his windshield, a smear of color and movement that didn't belong to him. Back inside the apartment, everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. The silence was deafening, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the truth and were now echoing it back to him. He sank onto the couch, hands trembling, face hollow. Emily had lied. He had seen it. And now, he was alone with that knowledge, holding it like a secret weapon he didn't know how, or whether, to use. A part of him still wanted to be wrong, still hoped for some twisted explanation. But deep down he knew. The woman he loved had already left him. She just hadn't told him yet. What how? The next morning, the memories hit him like shards of glass. Michael sat at the edge of the bed, piecing together fragments, past moments had ignored, instincts smothered by love. He recalled the weekend she claimed she was visiting her sister, yet came back with no photos, no stories, just silence and a mysterious necklace she found on sale. He remembered waking once to find her whispering on the phone in the bathroom, lights off, voice low. When he asked, she brushed it off as work. He had believed her. Every time. Because love demands trust, and trust, he realized now, can be a slow poison when misused. These weren't isolated events. They were a pattern. And like stars in the dark, once he looked closely, the constellation of betrayal was unmistakable. Michael couldn't carry the weight alone. He called Darren, his closest friend since college. Darren picked up on the second ring, groggy but alert when he heard the tension in Michael's voice. Over coffee at a quiet diner, Michael told him everything. Darren listened without interrupting, his brow furrowing, fingers tapping the table in quiet agitation. "You sure it wasn't a misunderstanding?" he asked. Though even he didn't sound convinced. Michael shook his head. "I saw them twice. The way she looked at him, it wasn't new." Darren exhaled hard, then leaned in. "You need to talk to her. But first, you need to know what you're walking into." The idea struck Michael like lightning. Maybe there was more. Maybe this was deeper than he imagined. And suddenly, not knowing became worse than the betrayal itself. Numbing. That night, while Emily showered, Michael sat at her desk, heart pounding. He didn't want to do this. He hated it. But Darren's words echoed in his ears. He opened her laptop. No password. That surprised him. He opened her email. Mostly normal. Then a folder titled, Consultation, Clients. Inside, names and attachments, nothing unusual. Until one thread caught his eye, frequent emails with a TTT. Professional at first. Then a gradual shift, weekend replies, playful emojis, then one with no subject. He opened it. A picture, Emily and the man from Basso's. Smiling. Arms around each other. Casual. Intimate. Taken weeks ago. No caption. But it spoke volumes. Michael closed the laptop and stared at the dark screen, seeing his own reflection, and a version of his life that no longer existed. 1-2. The sound of the shower stopping jolted Michael. He shut the laptop, slipped back onto the bed, feigning sleep. Emily emerged minutes later, towel wrapped around her, humming a tune. She glanced at him and paused, as if sensing something different. But then she smiled softly and disappeared into the closet. Michael lay still, every muscle tight, mind racing. He had proof now. Undeniable, raw, visceral. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like death. Of trust. Of connection. Of the man he was when he believed her. She crawled into bed beside him, skin warm against his. He didn't move. Couldn't. Her betrayal wasn't just about another man. It was about everything they were supposed to be. And now, beneath the weight of silence, he had to choose confrontation or collapse. Well, we shall. The next morning, Emily left early for a supposed team strategy session. Michael waited 5 minutes, then grabbed her phone from the bathroom counter. His fingers trembled as he navigated through apps. She never used to have a lock screen. Now she did. But he knew the code, her late father's birthday. It opened. Inside, everything looked normal. Group chats, work messages, and then one contact saved as Tanner, design lead. The same teat from the emails. He opened the thread. Hundreds of messages. Most innocent. But as he scrolled back, they grew personal. Inside jokes. Photos. Plans. Mentions of our spot. One message from 2 weeks ago read, "Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you." And then Emily's reply, "Me neither." It felt real. Michael's chest ached. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was in love. And she had left breadcrumbs everywhere. Later that day, Michael returned to Bassos. Not to spy. Just to feel it again. To relive the moment that shattered him. He sat at the bar, ordered black coffee, and stared at the booth where they sat. It was empty now, but he could still see them, her laughter, the man's gaze. The bartender recognized him. "You were here the other night, right? Waiting for someone?" Michael nodded absently. The bartender continued. "She and the guy. 3rd time this month, always that corner." Michael blinked. It wasn't just a moment. It was a routine. A hidden life. Unfolding right here in the open. He felt suddenly invisible, like a ghost haunting a memory that didn't belong to him anymore. Unable to hold it in, Michael called Claire. She picked up quickly, cheerful at first, until she heard his voice. He didn't accuse her. Just asked, "Did you know?" Silence. Then, a sigh. "Michael, it's not what you think." His heart pounded. "Then what is it, Claire?" Her tone softened. "She's confused. It started after your fight in February. She told me she felt distant. Like you'd checked out." Michael's throat tightened. "That doesn't explain hiding him. Lying." Claire paused again. "I didn't approve of it, but she's scared. Of hurting you. Of losing who she was with you." He wanted to scream, to cry, but all he could do was whisper. She already did. Claire didn't respond. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was loaded with truth. That evening, Michael searched social media for Tanner. It didn't take long. A few mutuals. An open profile. He was everything Michael wasn't: stylish, charismatic, a creative director with an award-winning portfolio. Scroll after scroll, Michael uncovered photos from company retreats, rooftop dinners, art exhibits. And there was Emily. Subtle appearances standing close, sometimes tagged, sometimes not. She hadn't just drifted into something. She'd chosen it, cultivated it. Michael stared at a photo where they stood shoulder to shoulder, eyes locked like no one else existed. No one had ever looked at him that way. It was like Tanner had stolen not just Emily, but the version of her Michael had never truly known. One friend. Michael closed the laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling as if it could offer answers. The timeline made sense now. The coldness. The subtle withdrawal. Emily hadn't stumbled into betrayal. She'd drifted toward something she craved. Excitement. Attention. Art. A new version of herself. And in her silence, Michael saw his own mistakes too. The routine. The comfort. The assumption that love meant stasis. But even that awareness didn't numb the ache. Knowing where he failed didn't make her deception justifiable. It only made it tragic. They'd both let something die, and she had chosen resurrection elsewhere. As the night deepened, Michael realized the worst part wasn't that she lied. It was that she never said goodbye. 3 days passed. Michael didn't confront her. He watched instead, observed, noticed every time she smiled at her phone, every mysterious call from the agency, every subtle deflection. He was unraveling. Finally, on a crisp Friday evening he followed her again. But this time, she didn't meet Tanner at a restaurant. She walked into a community center downtown. Curious, he waited, parked just across the lot. An hour passed. Then she stepped outside. Alone. Tanner followed moments later. But they didn't touch. They didn't even speak. They got into separate cars. Michael's pulse raced. He waited, confused. Whatever this was, it wasn't a date. It wasn't romantic. The script in his head started to crack, and doubt, for the first time in days, slipped in. Maybe the truth wasn't what he thought it was. Driven by curiosity, Michael returned to the center the next day and pretended to inquire about classes. A receptionist smiled and handed him a brochure. "You looking to volunteer?" she asked. "My partner's been helping with the trauma art therapy group. Beautiful work they're doing," she added casually. Michael's breath caught. "Who runs that group?" he asked. She pointed to a wall of staff photos. Tanner's name was there. Lead coordinator. And beside it, Emily's. Volunteer. Support artist. His stomach turned. It wasn't a secret affair. It was a program. The late dinners. The work events. The laughs. They weren't lies. They were shields. He staggered out the door, unsure whether to feel shame, relief, or heartbreak. The affair he imagined wasn't real. But something else, something equally painful, was. Whoa. Back home, Michael sat on the edge of their bed, fingers interlaced, head bowed. How much had he missed? Emily wasn't cheating, at least not in the physical sense. But emotionally? She'd chosen to give herself to a world he knew nothing about. She was healing others while he was unraveling. He thought he was protecting himself with silence, but in truth he'd built a wall so high she had to find connection elsewhere. Maybe she hadn't wanted to lie, but maybe he hadn't been listening. Still, the secrecy hurt. The intimacy she shared outside their home wasn't nothing. And he couldn't decide if he was angry or just lost. Betrayal hadn't come in the form of infidelity. It had come as absence. As evolution without him. Whoa. When Emily came home that night, she found Michael sitting in the dark, lights off, just the hallway lamp casting a faint glow. She paused, sensing the weight in the air. "Michael?" she asked softly. He looked up. "I know about Tanner, about the center." Her eyes widened, not with guilt, but with sadness. "I wanted to tell you," she whispered, "but I knew you'd think the worst." His voice cracked. "And you didn't trust me enough not to?" She sat beside him, careful, uncertain. "You've been so far away, Michael. I didn't know how to reach you anymore. This was mine. It made me feel like me again." Silence hung between them like a verdict. He didn't yell. She didn't cry. They just sat in the weight of 1,000 unsaid things. Now, the revelation should have brought clarity, but instead, it deepened the divide. Michael understood now, understood her need to feel alive, to give, to be more than his partner. But knowing didn't erase the months of mistrust, the sleepless nights, the imagined betrayals that became real in his mind. They slept apart that night, not because they were angry, but because neither knew what came next. She hadn't cheated, not physically, but the intimacy, the secrecy, had built a wall between them, a wall even truth struggled to scale. And as dawn crept into the sky, Michael realized something terrifying. Sometimes, even when no one cheats, something still breaks. And when it does, love becomes memory faster than you can hold on to it. One noon. The silence between them wasn't loud, it was surgical. It cut with precision. Days passed where they coexisted like strangers, occupying the same emotional wreckage. They spoke in necessities, groceries, schedules, the dog. But every word was wrapped in tension, every glance a silent accusation or a plea for understanding. One evening, while folding laundry, Michael finally said, "I don't know how to be around you anymore." Emily didn't look up. "I know," she said quietly. "I don't know how to be around myself either." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. They both knew the relationship hadn't exploded, it had eroded. A slow, relentless decay. Neither of them stopped until it was too late. And now they were standing on its brittle remains, trying not to fall through. "Want me?" The confrontation erupted not with shouting, but with a single misplaced word. Michael mentioned Tanner, his tone cold, sarcastic. Emily snapped. "You think I wanted this? You think I chose to fall out of love with you?" The room ignited. "You did choose," he shot back. "You chose not to talk. You chose secrecy." Her voice cracked. "I tried, Michael. You weren't there. You were always distant, always tired. I was alone long before Tanner." He stepped back, pain etched in every word. "So you replaced me?" "No," she whispered. "I survived you." The silence afterward was suffocating. Neither moved. Neither apologized. Because the truth had finally been spoken, and it had broken something neither could pretend to repair. While Michael sat in the hallway that night, his back against the wall outside the bedroom door. Inside, Emily cried quietly, the sound barely audible through the wood. But it echoed inside him like thunder. He didn't go in. He couldn't. They were past comfort now. Past touch. He thought of the nights they stayed up laughing about nothing, of the morning coffees, the silent language only lovers understand. Now every memory felt like a photograph curling in fire, familiar, beautiful, disappearing. He pressed his forehead to the wall and whispered, "I miss you," even though she was just feet away. But he knew she wouldn't hear it, because what had broken between them wasn't just trust. It was access. Melvin's shawl. The next morning, over untouched breakfast, Emily broke the silence. "We could try counseling," she said, eyes fixed on the coffee mug in her hands. Michael didn't respond at first. Then, would it matter? She looked up, finally meeting his gaze. "I don't know, but I want to try. Because if we don't, this is the end." He exhaled slowly, exhaustion in every breath. "Then maybe it is. Not a threat. Not a decision. Just truth." "Wow." She nodded, eyes welling, but no tears fell. They sat in that truth, knowing trying might delay the inevitable, but not erase it. They were at a precipice. And the only thing more terrifying than jumping was standing still. One evening there. That night, Emily packed a bag. Slowly. Methodically. She didn't announce it. Michael stood in the hallway, watching her fold clothes, place books in careful rows, zip her travel case like she was closing a chapter. "Where will you go?" he asked, voice low. "Claire's, just for a while." He nodded, hands stuffed deep in his pockets. Neither of them cried. There were no last kisses, no apologies. Just silence. The kind that stretches across years, across love once fierce, and now faint. She paused at the door, looked at him and said, "We stopped being us a long time ago. We just didn't want to admit it." Then she left. And Michael stood in the quiet that followed, in a house that no longer felt like home. Wonder. Numtio. The apartment felt foreign now. It echoed in a way it hadn't before, as if the absence of Emily had rearranged the acoustics of memory itself. Michael moved through rooms like a ghost. Her things were mostly gone, but her presence lingered, in the indentation on the couch cushion, the half-empty shampoo in the shower, the mug she always used still drying on the rack. He didn't touch anything. He couldn't. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table and stared at the chair she used to curl her legs into. The silence was thicker now, not tense, but hollow. He knew space was supposed to bring clarity, but all it had given him so far was noise, his own regrets, amplified in every empty drawer she once filled. Wow. Michael avoided mirrors for days. But one morning, as sunlight spilled through the bathroom window, he stood before one and truly looked. Unshaven, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, shoulders slumped. He barely recognized himself. This wasn't just about Emily. It was about what he'd become, passive, withdrawn, safe to the point of invisibility. Somewhere along the way he stopped showing up. Not just for her, but for himself. He touched the glass as if trying to reach a former version trapped behind it. It wasn't guilt that overtook him, it was grief. Not just for her, but for the man he'd once been. A man who believed love could coast, that time didn't need tending. Now he knew better. And the cost of that lesson was echoing through every reflection. The phone buzzed late one evening. Michael almost didn't answer. The screen read, Emily. His thumb hovered, then tapped. Hi, she said. Just that. Quiet, hesitant. He stayed silent. I'm not calling to explain. Or to ask anything, she continued. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For lying, for leaving the way I did, for not speaking when I should have. Michael closed his eyes. I failed too, he admitted. I wasn't present, I let us drift. We both did, she said. There was a long pause. I don't know what happens now, she added. Me neither. The silence that followed wasn't sharp. It was soft. Worn. Worn. Almost comforting. For the first time they weren't fighting or pretending. They were just two people, acknowledging the wreckage, and maybe, just maybe, respecting the ruins. One tool B. A week later, Michael received a letter. Handwritten. .pk. From Emily. No declarations, no pleas. Just memories. Reminders of who they were when things were good. Inside jokes. Her favorite moment with him, lying on the roof, watching stars in silence. She didn't ask for anything. She simply said, thank you. For the love. For the time. For the part of her life that he helped shape. Michael read it 3 times. Then folded it carefully and tucked it into the drawer beside their old photo booth strips. He didn't cry. He didn't smile. He just sat with it. Because closure isn't clean. It doesn't heal. But it helps you exhale. Helps you move from drowning to floating. For the first time in months he breathed. I'm through. 1. The next morning, Michael did something he hadn't done in months. He went outside for no reason. No errands. No destination. Just a walk. The air was crisp, the world unchanged, yet everything felt unfamiliar. As he passed a small park, he paused to watch a child chase a kite, laughing freely. The sound caught him off guard. It reminded him that joy still existed outside of memory. He sat on a bench and closed his eyes, not to escape, but to be present. Healing wouldn't come all at once. He didn't expect it to. But maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning. Not of forgetting her, but of remembering himself. And in that small, quiet moment, Michael didn't feel broken. He just felt becoming. 1. Way. 2 months passed. Seasons shifted. The apartment grew quieter, not just from absence but from adjustment. Michael had rearranged the living room, moved her chair, replaced the coffee table. Not to erase her, but to reclaim space. One evening, as the wind rustled the windows, there was a soft knock. He opened the door to find Emily standing there. She wasn't crying. She wasn't trembling. Just calm. I left something, she said. She stepped inside, retrieving an old sketchbook from the shelf. They stood in silence for a moment, both unsure what this was. You look well, she finally said. He smiled faintly. So do you. No anger. No bitterness. Just 2 people, changed. She nodded and walked back to the door. Take care, Michael. You too, Em. And just like that, she was gone, this time, without breaking anything. Whoa. After she left, Michael opened the windows wide. Letting in the cold breeze felt like inhaling something honest. He brewed tea, sat near the window, and didn't check his phone. Didn't scroll, didn't distract. Just sat. It wasn't joy he felt, but peace. A kind of fragile acceptance. The hurt wasn't gone, but it no longer defined him. He could think of her without shattering. Could revisit moments without unraveling. They had loved. They had failed. And now, they existed in each other's past, not out of malice, but because sometimes people grow in different directions. As the breeze tugged gently at the curtains, he smiled. Not because it was over, but because he'd survived it. And for the first time in a long time, he believed that was enough. Once more, Michael began running again. At first, just a block. Then, 2. Then longer. The rhythm gave him something the apartment couldn't. Momentum. Every footfall felt like reclaiming something. On one run, he passed the bookstore where he and Emily used to browse on rainy Sundays. He paused, then stepped inside. The same bell rang above the door. He bought a book, one he'd never read, one she never liked. A small, strange triumph. Healing, he realized, wasn't a return to who you were. It was becoming someone else, someone that pain shaped but didn't own. He didn't need to forget her. He just needed to remember himself. And with every breath, every step, every unfamiliar chapter, he was doing exactly that. Sometime later, Michael found himself sitting on the roof again, same spot where he and Emily once stargazed. The sky was clear, deep, infinite. But this time, there was no memory clinging to it. Just stars, cold and distant, yet beautiful all the same. He didn't wish to go back. Didn't ache to rewrite anything. There was peace in knowing some stories don't end with resolution. They simply stop growing. He held a notebook filled with scribbles, thoughts, pieces of himself scattered across pages. One line read, "She didn't destroy me. She just finished a chapter I wasn't brave enough to close." He smiled at that. For once, not with bitterness but gratitude. For love. For the pain. For the growth. For the ending. He stood up, stretched, and looked out over the city, its lights blinking like tiny promises. Somewhere out there, Emily was living a different version of their future. And he, finally, was no longer haunted by it. Michael exhaled, slow and deep, then whispered into the still night, "Thank you for loving me." When you did, he meant it, every word. Then he turned, walked down the rooftop stairs, and closed the door behind him. Not in sorrow, not in anger, just in closure. The final scene wasn't dramatic. No swelling music. No grand declaration. Just a man choosing peace, choosing himself, walking forward. And in that final moment, nothing needed to be said. Because healing had arrived, not loud, but complete.